We'll show you a live picture right now of Des Moines, Iowa. This is where John McCain's going to be having a news conference, or at least issuing a statement in a short time. I want to bring in Peter Slutsky, a blogger and co-host of the online radio show Doublespeak, and Amanda Carpenter is a national political reporter for townhall.com. And Amanda, first of all, well, let's just play this. This is element number 3. This is what John McCain said earlier this morning when he was essentially taking responsibility for passage of the bailout before the bill had been voted upon. Here's the soundbite, and I'll get your reaction to this. Hold on one sec. All right, well, we'll have it in a second. You know what? Why don't I? Well, there it is. Here it is.
I went to Washington last week to make sure that the taxpayers of Ohio and across this great country were not left footing the bill for mistakes made in Wall Street and evil and greed in Washington.
Amanda, what's your reaction to that?
Well, you know, a lot of people thought this bill was going to pass. There's even reports from Politico.
No. A lot of people. Wait a second. A lot of people on Capitol Hill last night were saying the votes were not there. And in fact, John Boehner last night was asked specifically at his news conference that we took live here on MSNBC, and maybe John McCain and others didn't see it. But John Boehner was asked specifically, are the votes there? And he said, I don't know. So, but continue.
Well, Politico reported that Barack Obama had a speech prepared declaring that the bill had passed, and he had to change it at the last minute, too. So just because his speech started a little bit later than McCain's, I think they were both counting on for it to pass. But the fact is, I mean, even if it didn't, John McCain did get House Republicans to the table. And you can be upset whether the bill passed or not, but those are voices that deserve to be heard.
So in other words, it's simply enough, Peter, just to bring the voices to the table, not to actually get them to commit to vote on your position.
I guess so. I mean, they are at the table. They're in Congress. You know, this day and the last couple of days has just been incredible to watch. And I know it's a hard day today to be a McCain surrogate because it's unexplainable, the erratic behavior of the campaign. You know, Amanda says that Obama had a speech prepared, but he didn't make
Peter,
it.
I'm not a McCain
John
surrogate.
McCain said...
Just to keep that clear, I am a political reporter for a conservative site. I do not represent John McCain's campaign.
Right.
Fair enough.
I've been
Point made.
Peter,
go ahead.
And I've heard other surrogates coming on explaining that John McCain was there and ready to lead. He put his country first. And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the House Republicans didn't put their country first because this is the White House's bill. This is their president's bill. And they failed to vote on it. And the American taxpayer, people who have assets in the stock market, were the big losers today.
There were House Republicans that had serious misgivings about this bill and the amount of power it would have handed over to Treasury, which I think are principled stances to take. And if the Democrats really wanted to pass this bill, there were a number of them that also opposed it. You know, half the House nearly voted against this bill. About 100 of them Republicans, about 100 of them were Democrats. So
Amanda,
let's talk about who really voted against this bill.
How come so many of these Republicans were not convinced? How come so many of these Republicans were not convinced when you have the president, the leader of the Republican Party, saying that if you don't pass this, we're headed into a deep recession, a serious crisis, when you have the Treasury Secretary saying the same thing face to face? How come that wasn't enough to convince these lawmakers?
Well, it's no secret that there's a strong faction of House conservatives that have opposed President Bush on any number of issues. Look at immigration reform. Look at campaign finance. I mean, you can look at the gamut. They had serious concerns about the amount of money, the debt that would be increased, the taxpayer money that would be given to foreign banks. So in other words, isn't the bottom line that these lawmakers don't believe President Bush now? They don't believe him. Well, each of them had different reasons for opposing the bill. You had Congressman Garrett explain his reasons, which I think, you know, made a lot of sense, and a lot of them fall into that camp.
Peter, you get the last word.
David, let me just jump in. You know, at the end of the day, what happened here was John McCain came to town. He blew up the original deal. And then he had time over the weekend and to put this deal together, to bring Republicans to the table, to talk to them, to work through their issues. And today we saw a massive failure in leadership from the McCain campaign. Today was the 3 a.m. It was 3 a.m. in America. It was a moment of national crisis. John McCain came in to save the day, and ultimately he couldn't get it done. And that's a big difference in leadership between Senator McCain and Senator Obama.
Peter Slutsky, thank you very much. And Amanda Carpenter, reporter for townhall.com, thank you as well. We appreciate it. And again, we're waiting for a statement from John McCain.